What license is Godot under, by the way? I'm actually not.
It's MIT.
Okay. So someone could decide that they want to take like a proprietary version of the engine in like a whole nother direction if they wanted to then.
Yeah, yeah. You can rename it and sell it and say this is like I don't know, like yeah, my engine, and yeah, they can do that. The license is permissive.
Well, even
Um,
yeah, even
that's
if
something that
sorry, go on.
no, that's something that you don't get out of licenses like GPL, which they have their advantages, but like I think that it makes sense for Godot because you don't have that like concern of like like extending it and not being able to also like keep part of it for yourself if you want to, if your studio needs to, or anything like that.
Well, yeah, even if I was gonna say, like, even if at some point the foundation was like, "Hey, we are just going to have like we're gonna have future versions of Godot be developed like as a proprietary thing." There's always still gonna be that like there's still going to be that MIT version that someone could decide to take over and continue developing. Even if the main focus of Godot becomes like a proprietary version, like that's still going to be there that anyone else can get involved with.
Yeah, but it's not even in our
Well, yeah, it's sort of
like
like just
mission
theoretical.
statements,
Yeah.
right? There are some companies that formed around Godot. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, there's one called Ramattack who offers something like that. They have like a specialized version of Godot for exporting to mobile
Okay.
like version like Android and iOS, and that if it works for them, that's okay. They also contribute part of that to the engine, and they are
Huh.
sponsoring the engine.
Okay.
But for us, it's not like a goal at any time. And yeah, theoretically, we could do like a dual license kind of thing, but also like I don't think that any of us in the community are even interested about it. Like I just like all the people that are working at the moment were passionate about it, and I think that if we would do something like that, they will just not work with us anymore. Like even myself, like I wouldn't be interested, and I don't know what can be offered on top of it. And yeah, it seems like a very weird idea. Like I've seen the conversation like, oh yeah, Godot can do this in the future, they can change the license or anything like that, but it doesn't really make any sense. Like it would be really hard to try to make a business out of that. But
Well,
if there are some things that we can implement legally to prevent it, and you have some ideas, I'm happy to like
I
implement any safeguards or anything like that.
uh have good people running the project. Have good people in the
Yeah, I
foundation.
mean, yeah, that's like also the fact that all the people that got here are also passionate about open source. It's what makes the difference, right? Like it's not our motivation. And this is sometimes a problem because monetarily we are not that. We were very lucky lately. We announced the Godot Development Fund, where you can send money to the project, kind of like in a Patreon way, and we have the platform, so we have to pay a lot of fees. So that's great. And with the recent Unity news, a lot of people jumped in and started donating. So that's great for us to be more sustainable and being able to pay the contractors and be more sustainable in general. And we don't have the means to offer really really good salaries. So people who are working at Godot at the moment is because they want to, but as soon as they get an offer from a AAA studio, it's impossible for us to compete with those salaries, right? If you have a person that's a pro doing like let's say physics or something like that, there's not too many of them in the world even to have them. So it's hard for an open source project to compete with that in terms of they can come, they can say, okay, we can hire you, we can give you 300K a year, and that's it. But the people who stayed at the project are the ones who are passionate about it, myself included, and it's I think an ideological also like endeavor. It's not only like a monetary thing, right? Like working for a project that is open source or anything like that. And we don't want to have that structure that some other open source projects have, where there's the private company like You have like kind of like canonical, and then you have like uh, we don't want to do anything like that. So the people who are now working on Godot are just working on Godot, and we don't plan to
Mhm.
start a business. Some people that are on the Godot Foundation have started their own businesses to provide services for Godot, but there will never be like a Godot company, let's say.
Yeah, I'm noticing that with console support, one of the things listed in the documentation is Lone Wolf technology, uh,
Mhm.
started by one of the co-founders of Godot.
Yeah, Lone Wolf is by one of the co-founders. Then there's W4 Games, which another like of the co-founders also did. Ram Attack is also like by one of the persons who've been on the project for a long time. Then you have Pineapple Works, who did a lot of porting for many of the popular games in Godot for consoles. So you have a lot of companies that are around the ecosystem, and they have their own business model and everything like that. And they deal with the stuff that we don't want to deal, because as soon as you get into those things, you need to start dealing with proprietary code, like libraries that are like just not, the mobile situation. You have all these SDKs like for ads, for tracking, for all those things. We don't want to spend even a single hour of development time on anything like that.
Mhm.
We understand that for some people that's very important for their games, and some people have developed libraries to include Google Ads or ads from Facebook or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we are not going to be providing those because that's not part of our mission. So that's where those companies come in, and it's great that they exist because that also makes the people who are making games like being able to use those services, but we don't have to deal with that. It's not what we want to do.
Right. So one thing you mentioned a while back was the console support situation. So you
Yep.
can do like you can get a game working on a console that is made in Godot, but the engine itself doesn't, from my understanding, natively support that.
Yeah, it's
Like you don't have
I think
direct
there's
support for
two.
the SDKs in there.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also two parts of it, which one part is the fact that you might need to make adjustments to your game.
Mhm.
That's a big part of porting that nobody considers,
Sure.
which needs to happen. The other part is the having the SDK access and all that. And we tried many times with different ways of trying to talk with the consoles, like people, like, can you please give us that opportunity to publish this and that? But they are not really happy about you publishing those sort of code in a way that people can access to it, and it's open source and things like that. So it's kind of conflicting with our way of working.
Mhm.
I think things are gonna change in the future, but I think that now with the interest that there is now in Godot and a lot of the people like working on it, we're gonna see some changes in making it easier. But there's also the fact that Godot is open source. You can technically, if you're like skilled enough, you could do the port yourself.
Mhm.
I know this is like just a pipe dream for a solo developer, right? But it can be done. If you have a small kind of game, you can make the adjustments you need to the engine and do it.
Mhm.
So I think it's more like a complaint or like a request from people that are not that experienced, and they just want to have a button that says export to Xbox. And even if we could have that button, it would not be that easy because of the first part I told you, right? Like you need to make sure that you comply with all the requirements that they ask you, that the controls work properly, that you display like the inputs as they should, everything like that. So I think it's a request from people that are not that experienced.
Yeah.
But I also understand that it should be easier to just get your games there because it's a big market, and it's also like the goal for many people like grew up playing Nintendo games, and they want to see their game in the Switch because it's a Nintendo console, and the feeling that you get from that is different than exporting it to Steam, let's say.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's gonna change with time, and it's gonna get easier.
Or even just doing stuff like on PC, like exporting it to Windows and exporting to Linux. Like there are some game devs out there for some reason will put a Linux version of their game on Steam and then never maintain it. And within 2 updates, it is completely unplayable.
Yeah, yeah. one cool thing about Godot is that most of the developers are using Linux themselves, so like the Linux support is very very good. And right now with all the Steam Deck players,
Yeah.
you're gonna see like that's a great advantage. You can just export it to Linux and it works on Steam Decks with no problem. So that's quite good. Maybe if in the future more of the platforms are sort of like the Steam Deck, that will happen. I'm not sure that will happen, but one can dream, right?
One can certainly dream.